Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Books and Bytes. Today we're diving deep into Playing to Win by A.G. Lafley and Roger Martin.
Oh, this book, this is a classic, and for good reason. It really lays out like a practical, no-nonsense framework, for creating those winning strategies. And it's written by people who've actually like walked the walk.
Yeah.
Obviously, P&G, incredible growth. And Martin, one of the most influential thinkers like on strategy today, I think.
Yeah, it's not just theory. This is battle-tested, wisdom from the Frenches. And what I love is that it's like all built around this idea. Strategy is about making choices.
Yes.
Tough choices.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Lafley and Martin, their argument is, like so many companies, they confuse having a lot of options with having a strategy.
Right.
But true strategy, it's about deciding what you won't do. It's about focusing your resources like on a clear path to victory, even if that means saying no to some pretty tempting opportunities.
Like that famous quote, I think it's Michael Porter, the essence of strategy is choosing what not to do.
Yes.
And that's what this book like really drives home.
Right. It's about making those difficult trade-offs, those bets that will set you apart from the competition. And to help you do that, they introduce this really elegant framework. It's called the Strategic Choice Cascade.
Okay, let's unpack that.
Yeah.
What exactly is the Strategic Choice Cascade?
So it's essentially a series of 5 interconnected questions that guide your strategic decision-making. It all starts with defining your winning aspiration.
Okay, so before you even think about tactics or execution, you need to be crystal clear about what success looks like.
Exactly. And this is where a lot of companies, they stumble. They get caught up in short-term metrics like market share or quarterly profits. But Lafley and Martin, they're pushing for a much more ambitious vision.
Yeah.
Winning, it isn't just about playing the game. It's about like fundamentally changing it in your favor.
And they use a really powerful example to illustrate this point. General Motors Saturn brand.
Right.
Saturn,
their goal was like they just wanted to play in the small car market.
Right.
They made decent cars, but they never really like took off. They lacked that bold aspirational goal that would have driven them to make the tough choices, to like make those big investments necessary to dominate.
So they ended up getting outmaneuvered basically by competitors like Toyota and Honda, who were very clear about their desire to win.
Exactly. And that's why defining your winning aspiration, it's so crucial. It sets the direction for everything that follows.
Okay, so once you know what winning looks like, what's the next step in the cascade?
Then you move on to where to play. So this is about deciding on your target markets, your product categories, your geographic focus duration, the specific arenas where you'll compete.
And this is where P&G's famous core concept comes in. Right?
Absolutely. So P&G, they realized they couldn't be everything to everyone. They needed to focus their resources on the areas where they had the greatest advantage.
Right.
So they doubled down on their core brands, core geographies, and even core technologies, like where their strengths were most impactful.
And this is where a lot of companies fall into those common traps that Lafley and Martin highlight, right? Like trying to be everything to everyone or buying their way into a more attractive market without a clear strategy.
Yeah, you nailed it. So they call it the refusal to choose trap, where companies, they spread themselves too thin trying to chase every opportunity. Or the buying your way out trap, where they acquire their way into a new market but end up with a more complex mess because they haven't really thought through how they're going to win.
So it's not enough to just be in the right market. You need to have a clear strategy for winning in that market.
Precisely. And that brings us to the third question in the cascade: how to win.
Okay, so you've got your winning aspiration. You know where you're going to play. Now it's time to figure out how you're going to beat the competition.
And here, Lafley and Martin, they lay out 2 fundamental paths to victory: low-cost leadership and differentiation.
So you can either be the most efficient player, offering the lowest prices like Walmart, or you can differentiate yourself by offering a premium experience, a unique value proposition that justifies a higher price. Like, an Apple or a Starbucks.
Yeah.
And this is where it gets really interesting, I think, because your how to win choice has to be completely aligned with where to play.
Yes.
They have to work together in a synergistic way.
Exactly. It's about creating this beautiful harmony where your strengths in one area, they reinforce your strengths in another.
Right.
Think about Olive Garden versus a high-end Italian restaurant.
Yeah.
They both serve Italian food.
Sure.
but their entire strategies are built around completely different ways of winning.
You can't imagine Olive Garden suddenly trying to attract, you
Yeah.
know, foodies with white tablecloths and truffle oil. It just wouldn't work.
Exactly. And that's where P&G really excels. They've mastered the art of aligning their where to play and how to win choices. They understand their core consumers deeply, they build strong brands, and they create products that offer a clear, differentiated value proposition.
It's not just about making a product. It's about building like a whole experience around it. Like with Febreze, they found a completely new way to win, I think, in the air freshener market.
Yeah. Instead of just masking odors, they focused on eliminating them entirely. And that's what consumers really wanted. They tapped into an unmet need and created a whole new category of product.
So they had a winning aspiration. They knew where to play, how to win, but how do they actually execute on it? That's where the next two questions in the cascade come in, right? What capabilities must you have, and what management systems are required?
You got it. You can have the most brilliant strategy in the world, but without the right capabilities and systems, it's just words on paper.
And P&G identified 5 core capabilities that were essential to their success: consumer understanding, brand building, innovation, go-to-market excellence, and scale.
And what's fascinating is that they view these capabilities as an interconnected system, almost like a well-oiled machine where each part reinforces the others.
And they used the Gillette acquisition as like a prime example of how these capabilities work together to create like massive value.
Oh, that acquisition, that wasn't just about buying a bunch of popular brands. It was about bringing those brands into P&G's ecosystem, leveraging their expertise in consumer understanding, R&D and go-to-market execution to make those brands even stronger.
So it was a strategic move designed to like enhance their existing capabilities and further solidify their position in the market. But even the best strategy and capabilities will fail without
The right management systems. That's the fifth and final piece of the strategic choice cascade.
ding, ding, ding. This is where so many companies drop the ball. They spend all this time crafting this brilliant strategy, but then they don't create the structures, processes, and metrics to actually make it happen.
And this is a topic P&G takes very seriously. In fact, they completely overhauled their strategy review process. They wanted to move away from this typical, death by PowerPoint presentations.
Wow.
And foster a more genuine dialogue about strategy. They wanted to encourage what they call assertive inquiry.
So what exactly does assertive inquiry look like in practice?
So it's about combining advocacy, clearly articulating like your own ideas with genuine inquiry. So actively seeking to understand other people's perspectives. It's less about, defending your own turf and more about collaborating to find the best solutions.
So they created like a more collaborative and productive environment where everyone could contribute their ideas and challenge assumptions.
Exactly. And they also put a lot of emphasis on communication, making sure that everyone in the organization, not just like the top executives, understood the strategy. They boiled down their core strategic choices into these clear, concise messages that everyone could understand and rally behind.
It's amazing how much emphasis they put on like simplicity and clarity, because with a company as huge as P&G, you can imagine how easily things could get like lost in translation.
Absolutely. And beyond communication, they also put a lot of emphasis on building systems that would support those 5 core capabilities. For example, they revamped their approach to scale, recognizing that it wasn't just about size, but about leveraging that size to create real advantages in everything from, purchasing to overhead costs.
They also created like frameworks and training programs to make sure everyone in the company understood their approach to brand building and innovation. It was about embedding those capabilities into the DNA of the organization.
And they had this great phrase.
The first moment of truth.
Yes. It emphasized the importance of winning at that crucial moment when a consumer is standing in the store, deciding what to buy.
And then there was the second moment of truth.
Yeah.
Focusing on the actual experience of using the product. They wanted to make sure their products, like, delivered on their promises and created loyal, repeat customers.
Because in the end, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Creating products and experiences that people love.
So we've got this really powerful framework, the strategic choice cascade, that guides us through like the key decisions involved in building a winning strategy. But how do you actually think through those choices? How do you go from like a blank slate to a concrete plan?
That's where the 7-box framework comes in. It's a tool for analyzing kind of your strategic landscape from multiple angles,
Okay.
helping you identify those sweet spots where you can create a sustainable advantage.
Okay, 7 boxes. This is where it gets a little more complex, right?
It is, but it's incredibly insightful. It's like having this multifaceted lens that allows you to kind of examine your business and the competitive landscape from these different perspectives.
So walk me through it. Where do you even start with a framework like this?
Well, the first box focuses on industry structure. It's about understanding the underlying dynamics of the industry you're in,
Hmm.
the competitive forces, the key players, the trends shaping the future.
Makes sense. You need to know the lay of the land before you can even start thinking about strategy.
Exactly. And that leads to the next box, industry segmentation. It's about identifying the different segments within your industry, the different groups of customers with distinct needs and preferences.
So it's not enough to just know your industry. You need to know, like, the specific niches within it that you might target.
Right. And that's where the third box comes in, customer value analysis. Here, you dig deep into what your customers really want, what they value, and how much they're willing to pay for it.
Because in the end, it doesn't matter how great you think your product is. It matters what your customers think.
Exactly. You need to understand their pain points, their unmet needs. That's where the real opportunities lie.
Then you've got to look inward, right, at your own capabilities.
Yes, that's the fourth box, capabilities analysis. Here, you assess your strengths and weaknesses, what you do well and what you don't.
Yeah.
And you compare those to your competitors, looking for areas where you might have an advantage.
Because in the end, your capabilities are what allow you to execute on your strategy.
Right. If you want to win by being the low-cost leader, you need to have the capabilities to actually keep your costs lower than everyone else's.
And if you want to differentiate, you need to have the capabilities to create something truly unique and valuable.
Precisely. And that leads to the fifth box, cost analysis. Here you look at your cost structure, how much it costs you to produce and deliver your product or service.
So you're not just looking at capabilities in isolation, you're looking at the cost of, like, using those capabilities.
Exactly. You need to make sure you can deliver on your value proposition profitably.
And then, of course, you've got to consider your competition.
Yes, that's the sixth box, competitor analysis. Here you study your rivals, their strategies, their strengths and weaknesses. You try to anticipate how they might react to your moves.
Because in the end, strategy is like a game of chess, right? You've got to be thinking a few moves ahead.
That's a great analogy. And finally, you've got the seventh box, competitive advantage. This is where it all comes together. You analyze your industry, your customers, your capabilities, your costs, your competitors.
And you look for those sweet spots where you can create, like, a sustainable advantage, something that sets you apart and makes you truly hard to beat.
Exactly. It's about finding that unique combination of factors that allows you to create more value for your customers than your competitors can, while also generating superior profits for yourself.
So the 7 boxes are a way to systematically analyze your strategic landscape and identify those opportunities for creating, like, a winning strategy.
It's a powerful tool, but it's important to remember that it's an iterative process. You might start in one box, then jump to another as new insights emerge. It's about constantly refining your understanding of the strategic landscape.
And once you get a good grasp of, like, your strategic landscape,
Yeah.
you can start generating and evaluating, like, those strategic options. And that's where the reverse engineering process comes in, right?
Exactly. This is a really clever approach to making those tough choices. It flips the typical strategy discussion on its head.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So instead of starting with like a bunch of predetermined options and then arguing about which one is best, the reverse engineering process starts with the question, what would have to be true for this option to be a great choice?
So you're working backwards from the desired outcome to figure out what conditions need to be met.
Precisely. And this approach has several benefits. First, it helps you generate a more diverse set of possibilities because you're not limited by your preconceived notions of what's feasible.
You're opening yourself up to, like, new ideas, new ways of thinking.
Right. Second, it creates a much more constructive and collaborative environment for decision-making.
Because instead of, like, shooting down each other's ideas, you're working together to figure out what would need to be true for each option to succeed.
Exactly. And this helps you identify those potential barriers to success early on so you can design tests to address them.
So you're not just choosing an option based on gut feeling or intuition. You're making, like data-driven decisions.
That's the goal. And the book uses the example of oil of Olay to illustrate how this process played out in a real-world scenario.
Ah, yes. Olay, that was that, like, fading brand that P&G completely reinvented, right?
It was. Back in the 90s, Olay was seen as this like old-fashioned brand for older women. P&G had to figure out how to revitalize it, and the reverse engineering process helped them do just that.
So how did it work?
They started by generating a wide range of possibilities, everything from like acquiring a major global skincare brand to repositioning Olay as a prestige brand.
They even considered extending their CoverGirl brand into skincare.
Right. Then they went through each possibility and asked what would have to be true for this to be a great choice.
So, for example, if they were going to acquire a skincare brand, what kind of brand would it need to be? What would its market position need to be? What synergies would it need to offer?
Exactly. And by laying out those conditions for success, they were able to identify the potential barriers to each option.
And then they could design tests to see if those barriers could be overcome.
That's the key. They didn't just sit around debating the merits of each option. They got out there and gathered data to make informed decisions.
And in the case of Olay, they decided to reinvent the brand as a masstige product, right?
Yes. They realized that younger women wanted those prestige-like skincare products, but they weren't necessarily willing to pay those premium prices or shop in those high-end department stores.
So P&G decided to bring that prestige experience to the mass market.
And it was a huge success. Olay became one of P&G's most valuable brands.
It's amazing how such a simple shift in thinking, asking what would have to be true, can lead to such dramatic results.
And that's the power of the reverse engineering process. It forces you to think critically and creatively about your options, and it helps you make those tough choices with confidence.
So you've got this incredible framework for building a winning strategy. You know what winning means for you, you've figured out where to play, how to win, and you've built the capabilities and systems to make it happen. But the game doesn't end there, does it?
Not at all. In fact, that's where the real work begins because, as Lafley and Martin emphasize, no strategy lasts forever.
Right, it's that endless pursuit of winning idea. The market shifts, competitors adapt, consumer preferences evolve. You got to stay ahead of the curve.
And that's one of the things I really appreciate about this book. It doesn't shy away from the fact that even the best companies, even a powerhouse like P&G, make mistakes.
Right, they've had their share of product flops.
Yeah.
Like that time they tried to launch a unisex fragrance.
Oh, yeah, the dry idea debacle. It just goes to show that even with all the research and planning in the world, you can't predict everything.
But the key is to learn from those missteps, right? To constantly be evaluating, adapting, and refining your strategy.
Exactly. And they give a great example of this with Folgers coffee. Remember, this was a hugely profitable brand for P&G, but they saw the writing on the wall with the rise of single-serve coffee systems.
Like Keurig and espresso, yeah.
Yeah.
It was a completely different way of experiencing coffee.
And P&G realized that they just weren't positioned to win in that new landscape. So they made the tough decision to sell Folgers and focus their resources elsewhere.
Which in hindsight was probably a smart move. They could have tried to play catch-up, but sometimes it's better to cut your losses and double down on areas where you have a stronger advantage.
Absolutely. And playing to win offers some really insightful signs that can help you determine whether your strategy is truly on the path to winning.
So if you're thinking, okay, this all sounds great, but how do I know if I'm actually on the right track? What should you be looking for?
Well, first, your activity system, that's the unique way you deliver value, should be distinctly different from your competitors. If you're doing the same things in the same way, it's hard to create a sustainable advantage.
Right. You need to have something that sets you apart, something that's hard to copy. Like you mentioned earlier how P&G's deep understanding of their consumers is a core capability that's hard to replicate.
Exactly. Another sign is that your target customers absolutely love you, while those who aren't your target audience just don't get it. This means you're not trying to be everything to everyone. You're focusing on serving a specific segment exceptionally well.
It's like that saying, if you're trying to please everyone, you'll end up pleasing no one.
Exactly. Now, here's an interesting one. Your competitors should actually be making a good profit doing what they're doing.
Wait, really? Why would I want my competition to be profitable?
Because it means you've carved out a space where you can coexist without having to constantly fight tooth and nail for market share. If they're barely scraping by, they're more likely to become desperate and launch attacks on your core business.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
You want to be in like a healthy, competitive environment where everyone has room to thrive, even if you're aiming to be the leader.
Precisely. And ideally, those competitors should be attacking each other, not you. This indicates that you've become the toughest target in the industry, the one to beat.
So if you're seeing these signs, it's a good indication that your strategy is working. But even then, Lafley and Martin caution against complacency.
The pursuit of winning is never truly finished. It's about constantly pushing yourself, constantly learning, constantly adapting. It's a mindset, a commitment to excellence.
And that's a really powerful message, isn't it? It's not just about achieving like a particular goal. It's about embracing that ongoing journey of growth and improvement.
Now, one of the things that struck me about playing to win is that while it focuses on business strategy, these concepts can be applied much more broadly. Think about your own personal goals, your career, your relationships.
Right. What are your core capabilities?
Yeah.
Where do you choose to play? How do you define winning in your own life?
These are powerful questions to ask yourself because ultimately playing to win is about more than just business. It's about approaching any challenge with intention, purpose, and a relentless pursuit of excellence.
And on that note, we hope this deep dive into playing to win has given you some valuable insights to apply in your own life and work.
Remember, the journey is just beginning, so keep learning, keep adapting, and never stop playing to win.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time for another fascinating deep dive into the world of ideas.